Thank you really, Mr. Pinker, for this optimist and important speech to us.
Optimist, no.
Well, you are moderate. I could not agree more with your vision about our collective sociology, no? As well as the social psychology of our fellow citizens at this time. I also share your opinion that the world has progressed continually, particularly over the last 250 years. From your books and videos, I get the impression you see some setbacks now, such as the current trend toward authoritarian populist attitude of the extreme right and extreme left, as well as outlandish, as you have said now, models such as Turkey, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, and you said United States, which seem rooted in the past in addition to the dictatorships. No? However, you do not see this as a collective regression, but as exceptions that do not necessarily foresee a return to the ways of the past. Am I right about your vision?
Well, I think that progress can continue, but it is not inevitable, it's not guaranteed. And I often have to differentiate progress as I have conceived it from the notion that was popular in the 19th century, that there is this thing called progress, that we just naturally get better and better. That is magic. That's just not the way it works. Most of the forces of the universe are trying to make things worse. There's disease, there's decay, there's entropy, there's human nature. And as a psychologist, I know that there are many ugly, nasty parts of the human mind. So those are always threatening our progress. And if we make progress, it's because we use our heads to see them as problems to be solved. We always have disease. How do we fight disease? We always have the threat of war. How do we enable peace? Now, as long as there is power, there will be psychopaths and ruthless people who try to impose their will on the population. How do we prevent that from happening? Now, there's no guarantee that they will always work. And we often see that they don't work. We're seeing examples today. So I'm never surprised when there are setbacks. The challenge is always, how do we deal with the setbacks? And there's no guarantee that we'll win. Looks, as you mentioned, over the last 250 years, more often than not, we have had progress, but there were setbacks, and it's very uneven. So progress against hunger began probably in the mid to late 19th century. Progress against war did not begin until after 1945. Of course, we had the worst war in human history, was 1939 to 1945. Progress in democracy really, well, it goes in waves. I'm sorry that the audience could not see the graph in which I plotted the progress in democracy, but the progress really accelerated in the 1980s, late 1970s and 80s. So it occurs at different times. It's all a question of when we figure out the solutions that work, and there's no guarantee that we will.
Thank you. I have listened to you say that intellectuals hate progress, and those who define themselves as progressive really do not believe in it and despise it in some way. Do you think this is the result of an anthropocentric pessimism, or is a type of cynicism caused by the fear of losing the reason and arguments they have believed in for so long, or are they fed by them?
Yes, I said it as a kind of a joke, but the reaction to my book vindicated my joke, because some of the reviewers said, how dare he say that intellectuals hate progress? And how dare he say that there has been progress? So yes, I think it is remarkable how people who call themselves progressive are furious at the idea that there has been progress, because many of them are on the extreme left, and they believe that our institutions, capitalism and neoliberalism and the establishment are oppressive and corrupt. And of course, there are many aspects that are corrupt that need to be reformed. But on the other hand, it is an unmistakable fact that global extreme poverty has plummeted, that war has declined, that education has gone up. So often, because intellectuals themselves are not responsible for those advances, they aren't developing new vaccines or water supplies or treatments for malaria, other than the scientists, of course, or negotiating peace treaties, or sending out United Nations peacekeeping forces, or actually doing the things that result in progress. They feel alienated from those institutions. Those are the peacekeeping soldiers, those are the people installing pipes, those are the people who are developing better seeds. They're not us, and so we didn't do it. So we're upset when it happens.
Well, of the 10 things that you have mentioned today, that we have heard as the values of modern societies during this pandemic: life, health, sustainability, prosperity, leisure, freedom, and perhaps happiness are being most affected. The two remaining, power and knowledge, less so, which suggests to me that this pandemic has strongly affected the confidence in these values, at least in the short term. What do you think? That has happened really, or not so?
Well, in terms of knowledge, as I mentioned, it's actually quite astonishing how rapidly the world has deployed knowledge to fight the pandemic. Now, there are exceptions, such as the President of the United States, but a shame and an embarrassment to our country. But still, there have been horrible conspiracy theories. Bill Gates is deliberately infecting people so that he can sell vaccines. It's 5G cell phone towers. But still, governments have not been acting on those crazy ideas, and the momentum is toward developing a vaccine and epidemiological measures like social distancing and masks. Many countries, again, the United States is one of the worst, have not been effective at using scientific knowledge, but the world as a whole has been progressing very rapidly to containing the disease. Now, of course, it is not just in actual people getting sick and too many dying, but there are also other effects of the pandemic: poverty, other diseases that people are not getting treated because they are staying away from doctors, or because the infrastructure of poor countries doesn't allow the development of public health measures, the horrible economic effects. So there's just no question that most of the measures that have been increasing will go down in the next few years. History suggests that they will rebound and go back up. There's no guarantee, but there's certainly no question that this has not been a year of progress.
Now I think it must be politically incorrect to say that you have experienced intense of censorship yourself. the result of a society that allows those who believe the truth has been revealed to them behave like a new inquisition to prevent freedom of thought or expression. That is to say, it creates a new citizen theocracy that represents the only truth and that is determined to impose the canons of the politically correct on society, bigotry, and self-censorship. Are you concerned that this tendency will continue and could damage the freedoms that have been won after many centuries of struggle against religion, and fundamentalism?
I am concerned. I think that there is a threat to Enlightenment values from the right, from authoritarian populism. There is also a threat from the left, from the ideology that's sometimes called wokeism, being woke in the United States, of social justice, of anti-racism, that has rejected the idea that there is an objective truth, that no one knows it, but that we can try to seek it by open debate and disagreement, that societal problems are hard to solve, no one knows the answer. In this alternative way of thinking, there is a battle between groups that have power, namely white heterosexual men, and those that don't, women, people of color. It's a war there between them. It is zero sum. The more power that disadvantaged minorities and sexual minorities have, the less power white men must have, and vice versa. That free speech is just another weapon for the dominant to maintain power, that we know what is the cause of societal problems, namely racism and homophobia and sexism. So I think that our attempt to understand how the world works, how best to solve our problems, is threatened by a regime that says that there are bad people who have to be canceled, censored, shut down, that we already know the truth, that debate is dangerous, and that we should just change power relationships. That too is a threat to Enlightenment ideals. I think it worries me, not as much as authoritarian populism, because whereas intellectual life is corroded and corrupted by this left-wing activism, the people on the right actually control the police and the army and the government. So the threat is not exactly symmetrical, but the threat does come from both sides.
Yes. I am going to make a bit long exposition for this question. During the 18th century, with greater press freedom, it began at this time, libel appeared. In towns of 10,000 inhabitants, there were sometimes 100 newspapers, 97 of which were dedicated to defending the position of editors and defaming competitors, political enemies, or those who did not submit to their dictates or their way of thinking, politicians, officials, military, merchants, etc. The United Kingdom's anti-liberal laws prevented the chaos and affected freedom and freedom of information. And these laws also put an end to the fake debate on freedom of expression. Do you think we will see new anti-libel laws to deal with the phenomenon of defamation and insult on social networks. To deal with fake news and disinformation campaigns, doing this would mean changing the soul of the internet, but perhaps it will be necessary. What do you think about this?
It's extremely interesting, and I think we need to know more of the history of the kind that you just explained, because people often think that the fake news, the conspiracy theories, the quack cures, all of the garbage on social media is a new phenomenon. But as you point out, whenever there is a new medium, such as the press, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that circulates. And we have not yet figured out how to deal with the new forms of information spread in social media. I think we're in the middle of an experiment. We don't know how it will play out. We see that the rules of the game have a huge effect on the quality of different media. So the ones that we really do trust, the major newspapers, the scholarly journals, even Wikipedia, only about 20 years old, and Wikipedia has errors, but still it is surprisingly reliable. There are feedback loops, there's checks and balances. In fact, I think in any institution that is successfully approaches the truth, there are always rules, laws, measures that prevent people from just accepting any claim that is made. In science, there is peer review. In parliaments, there are checks and balances. There's the judiciary and the executive. In newspapers, there's fact-checking and editing. In Wikipedia, there's feedback and there are editors. Of course, in social media, so far, there's been none of that. And what we see is when there are no mechanisms of fact-checking and truth seeking, things can get out of control. Now, of course, you don't want government censorship because that will be used by governments to maintain their own power, but you need mechanisms that help weed out the obviously false, crazy, and libelous stories. How to do that with social media, which has unprecedented amount of content, and how you walk the line between censoring unpopular opinions and preventing the spread of dangerous falsehoods, we have not yet worked out. The different media companies, social media companies, Facebook and Twitter, have different policies. They're constantly changing. And I suspect they'll have to exert more control than they have. They are not government agencies, so it's not literal censorship in the sense of, say, the American First Amendment, but we will see attempts to solve this very difficult problem.
You told that for you, that you had a position that it was possible for you not to be affected against the campaign that some person in social networks and in other places attacked you in last time. But a lot of people have not the same position that you have. Do you believe they can resist a concerted attack of political activists and so on?
I think you've identified a very serious problem. When people attack me, I'm in a good position. I have a job. I'm a professor at Harvard University. I have tenure. That means they can't fire me just for my opinions. But there are people, especially younger people, who are much more vulnerable. They don't have jobs. They are students, they're assistant professors, they are journalists, they are independent writers and scholars. And that is one of the reasons that I try to speak out and defend people who are attacked for their opinions, because they are indeed vulnerable, and we have mobs that are oppressing and punishing people who have opinions that are not orthodox, who divert from the left-wing dogma that is taking over much of universities and the press.
Okay, thank you very much. I am so interested in what you are saying and all the things I know from you that I have listened, I have read in your books and in the different videos that are in the internet, that I will be talking with you a very long time. But they tell me that we must finish, and I will want to thank you very, very much for this extremely interesting conversation. Thank you, and your speech. Thank you very much, Mr. Pinker.
Thank you, and I thank you for your penetrating questions. Thank you.
Thank you.